Hey, this is Stephen Van Kampen-Lewis on April 22nd, 2021, and today I'm going to do another CARECOLLAB video, and so this will be my second one in 2 weeks. Again, thank you to Nina over at Ninja Orchids for inviting me to do this. These are kind of cool, and hopefully as I do more, I'll get the format down, and I don't necessarily have to have my cheat sheet next to me here to make sure that I hit all the points that I'm supposed to. But today I want to talk about Cattleya maxima, and I brought along my friendly neighborhood Cattleya maxima to talk about today. I'm going to talk about this particular plant, as well as some of the other ones that I've grown in the past, as well as the species in general, in collaboration with a few other YouTube folks, including Orchidea, Plants and Other Things, Patricia's Orchids, and of course Nina over at Ninja Orchids. So all of us will post a video about care and a collaboration about care for Cattleya maxima today. So, before we jump into the care itself, this is an interesting species, and there's a lot of really good information online. On my computer now, I have up one of the American Orchid Society sheets that talks about the background of the species, as well as Art Chadwick over at Chadwick Orchids. He's up there in the Northeast, in Powhatan, Virginia, and he's written extensively on unifoliate Cattleyas, and he's also one of the sources that I have up right now. And he just published a really great book. You can get the physical copy, but I prefer the electronic copy, so I have that. And it's sort of an update to his classic book called The Classic Cattleyas, and it's all about unifoliate Cattleyas. Highly recommended if you're into Cattleyas, unifoliate Cattleyas specifically. So this is actually a species from Peru, and this is actually the only species on the Pacific side of South America. I'm doing this as though that means the Pacific side, the western side of South America, and it's the only plant. It's the only Cattleya known to grow on the western slope of the Andes, and so it's somewhat isolated from the other Cattleyas. And actually, genetically, this one is kind of an oddball. It's technically a Cattleya, but it doesn't fit as cleanly as some of the other ones. For example, the Leylias that were recently put into Cattleya fit really nicely genetically into Cattleya. This guy's a little wonky. Nonetheless, the plants are beautiful. The flowers are beautiful. This is one of the interesting Cattleyas in that it has a Highland race and it has a lowland race. So the Highland race tends to be a little smaller. So this plant, the stature of this plant is Highland race. I'm going to put it next to my face so you can kind of see a size comparison, or you could use my hands as a size comparison as well. The Highland race tends to have longer plants, larger plants. It's hotter, it's wetter, and makes for a warmer growing plant that does get a little larger. There are some noticeable differences. The Highland race tends to have more intense flowers and fewer of them, and the lowland race tends to have lighter colored flowers, but lots of them. In any case, I would say they both tend to grow fairly similarly. The Highland race is, from my understanding, is better able to deal with cool temperatures, colder temperatures, as you can imagine. That said, the species as a whole, regardless of the Highland or lowland race that you might be growing, it is very adaptable. So while this can take fairly cool temperatures, I have taken this one down by accident into the low 40s and probably even to the high 30s, and it's just fine. As with most unifoliate Cattleyas, they do just fine, close to freezing, for very short periods, ideally not repeatedly, and if the roots are dry. So that's the absolutely most critical part of having your Cattleyas get down into the lower temperatures, approaching freezing, is to have dry roots, and that'll prevent rot. And again, to not do it very often if possible. So on the high side of things, just because this is a Highland race variety or a Highland race, it can take high temperatures quite fine. I mean, here in Texas, I grow this one for it's 105 degrees for months on end, as I've mentioned on so many of my videos. And this one has absolutely no problems with it. So, you know, you can grow this one cool, you can grow this one hot. It's very adaptable. In fact, this I would say is one of the more bulletproof of all the species that I've grown. It's kind of have to go out of your way to kill it. Now, that said, the ideal conditions are probably a little warmer than what I've been talking about, and maybe a little cooler than my conditions. Although, like I said, hot temperatures are just fine. As with just about all of my Cattleyas, I grow in clay pots, large grade orchid bark, and I water when the temperature is above 95 degrees Fahrenheit. It gets hit with water every day. When temperatures are about 85 to 95 degrees, it gets watered every other day. And then if it's cooler, it gets hit with water a couple times a week. And that seems to do really well for my temperatures. Fertilizing is not fussy. You can get fancy if you want, but you don't need to. A balanced fertilizer is just fine. You know, maybe half strength on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and you should be good to go. I like to hit my guys with some Kelp Max once a month. I find that really helps with a lot of things. For sunshine, it does appreciate fairly bright light. It grows in typical Cattleya conditions, so you can see the sunlight behind me. Once my plants are out of the greenhouse, they will be literally right behind me, and that's about the amount of shade / sun that my Cattleyas really enjoy. And I would say that's about 50% shade. It's about 5 p.m. right now, so the sun is setting, so it might actually look a little brighter than normal. It does set kind of behind me. So flowering for this one, you know, this Cattleya maxima is supposed to bloom in fall. I don't find that this one is particularly seasonal in its flowering. So some species will be, you know exactly when it's going to bloom every single year, probably within like a week or two. Not so much for Cattleya maxima. This one actually just wrapped up blooming. In fact, you can see the inflorescence. While the flowers are gone, the spike is still green. So this one started blooming. I think it opened its blooms just after our great freeze, sort of at the end of February here in Texas, and then the blooms lasted for about a month. This particular one is a con color, and I'll show you a photo of that right now. Con color is really nice in that it has this sort of light pink all over the flower. Con color is typically a one-colored flower, so let's say it's all light pink with no real variation. For some reason, Cattleya maxima in the designation of con color can have a white lip. I'm not sure why that is. That's what mine has, so I'm calling it a con color, and that's based on watching other videos from Brazil and watching other really well-known growers from Brazil call their similarly colored flowers con color. I'm going to show you a picture now of a typical, or a tipo. Cattleya maxima, really nice, and I've grown this one. I don't grow this particular plant anymore. In fact, I sold it to a friend of mine after I brought it from Hawaii. But it was also the Highland race, so it had a shorter statured flower and would bloom in fall or spring, pretty variable, often more than once a year. One of the things that I find really interesting about this species is its habit of growing up. And I want to show you so you can see that newest growth, how it's wobbling and all these roots are coming down. You can see that each growth is getting a little bit higher and a little higher, and it is kind of a frustrating growth habit, because I now have to take this oddly positioned plant and repot it. And actually, I'm glad I did this video, because I wasn't really paying that much attention to this one. And as you can see, the roots are coming out of this newly matured growth. So this one doesn't have to wait until after blooming. Its roots do come out right as it's maturing the newest growth. So this is probably a few weeks past where I would prefer to repot it. I like to repot when my roots are just poking out. So that's not ideal, but it is what it is. All right, well, as always, if you have questions or comments, please let me know in the comments section, and I will get back to you as quickly as I can. This is a really cool species, and if you are space limited, certainly the Highland race is probably a good size for you. And this, like I said, this species is pretty bulletproof, so enjoy, and I look forward to seeing your pictures of your plants and maybe even your videos if you ever make your own YouTube channel. So talk to you later. Bye.